A fighter plane, fuselage torn open by cannon fire, fuel streaming from ruptured tanks like blood from a wound. One wing was nearly shredded to ribbons. Any sane pilot would bail out. Any rational machine would simply fall from the sky. But this wasn't any machine. They called it the Mustang, named after those wild horses that roamed the American plains, the ones that refused to be tamed, refused to be broken, refused to die even when everything said they should. And up there in the savage skies of World War II, that name became prophetic. The P-51 Mustang wasn't just another fighter aircraft. It was something more. Bomber crews called them their guardian angels. Pilots swore these planes had souls, and the stories that came back from the blood-soaked skies over Europe, well, they were the kind that made you question where the machine ended and something else began. This is the story of the plane that refused to die. And if you want to hear more hidden legends like this, the kind of aviation history they don't teach in textbooks, hit that like button, share this with a friend who loves these stories, and subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Because what you're about to hear, it's going to change how you think about the word impossible. Let me take you back to 1943. The war in European skies had become a nightmare of mathematics and blood. Every single day, the U.S. 8th Air Force launched massive raids into the heart of Nazi Germany. Hundreds of B-17 Flying Fortresses and B-24 Liberators, each carrying 10 young men and enough bombs to level city blocks, would climb into formation and drone eastward into hostile territory. Now, these bombers weren't defenseless. They bristled with .50 caliber machine gun, nose, tail, belly, sides, enough firepower to make any attacker think twice. In theory, the combat box formation created overlapping fields of fire that should have protected them. In theory. In practice, the Luftwaffe was tearing them apart. German fighters, sleek Focke-Wulf 190s and deadly Messerschmitt 109s didn't just attack, they hunted. They studied bomber formations like predators studying a herd, finding the weak points, the stragglers, the wounded birds falling behind. They'd strike from the sun, from below, and from angles where bombers' guns couldn't track them fast enough. The losses were staggering. Some missions saw 1 in 4 bombers fail to return. 25% gone. That's not a military campaign, that's a slaughter. And here's the cruel reality. American fighters at the time simply couldn't go the distance. The P-47 Thunderbolts and P-38 Lightnings were good aircraft, but they didn't have the range. They could escort the bombers partway into German territory, and then, at the exact moment when the Luftwaffe attacks intensified, they had to turn back, fuel gauges reading empty. The bombers had to face the deepest penetrations alone. Air commanders watched their casualty reports with growing dread. At this rate, the entire daylight bombing campaign, a cornerstone of Allied strategy, might become unsustainable. They needed something that seemed impossible. A fighter that could escort bombers all the way to Berlin and back, fight at high altitude, match German fighters, and bring its pilot home alive. They needed a miracle. What they got was the Mustang. But here's the thing, it didn't start as a miracle. The first P-51s, powered by Allison engines, were fast and nimble at low altitude, but gasped for air above 15,000 feet, right where the bombers flew, right where they needed protection most. For a while, it looked like the Mustang would be just another good idea that didn't quite work out. Then, somebody had a crazy idea. What if we took that beautiful Mustang airframe, all those smooth lines and aerodynamic perfection, and married it to a British Rolls-Royce Merlin engine? The result was nothing short of alchemy. Suddenly, this fighter could dance at 25,000 feet. It could hit speeds over 430 miles per hour. And with external drop tanks slung under its wings, it could fly 1,300 miles, deep into Germany, all the way to Berlin and back. The American bomber crews finally had their guardian. You're a ball turret gunner, crammed into that tiny plexiglass bubble hanging beneath a B-17. 6 hours in the air, your oxygen mask feels like it's freezing to your face. Through the crystal clear air at 25,000 feet, you can see other fortresses in formation, vapor trails streaming behind them like chalk lines on a blue slate. Then the flak starts. Black flowers blooming in the sky, each one a burst of shrapnel that can shred aluminum like paper. Your plane shudders. Someone on the intercom reports a hit on the number 3 engine. And then you see them, tiny dots high above, catching the sun. Your heart drops because you know what's coming. Luftwaffe fighters positioning for their attack run. You're about to call it out when something else appears. Silver flashes, moving fast, intercept those dots before they can dive. The Mustangs have arrived. This is what the bomber crews saw. Mission after mission. Those P-51s would weave through the formation like protective wolves, their Merlin engines singing that distinctive high-pitched scream. When German fighters tried to press their attacks, the Mustangs would tear into them with 6 .50-caliber machine guns, driving them back, making them pay for every approach. Bomber crews started calling them angels, and they meant it. But what made the Mustang truly legendary wasn't that it just showed up. It was what happened when everything went wrong. The P-51 Mustang had something in its design that went beyond engineering specifications. Call it resilience. Call it stubborn durability. Call it whatever you want, but every pilot who flew one knew it was real. The airframe was built from aluminum alloy, structured like a cage that could flex and absorb punishment without catastrophic failure. Armor plates protected the pilot from behind and below. The fuel tanks were self-sealing. Hit, and they'd close around the puncture instead of spraying aviation fuel into the slipstream. And that Merlin engine, even when it was coughing, smoking, losing cylinders, leaking coolant, it had this stubborn tendency to just keep turning just a little longer. Just enough. Stories began spreading across airfields. A Mustang with half its tail shot away that somehow maintained enough control to limp home. One with the canopy shattered, hydraulics gone, landing gear stuck up. Yet the pilot still brought it in for a belly landing on friendly soil. Another one with over 200 bullet and cannon holes, fuel streaming from the wings, yet it stayed airborne for the 2-hour flight back to England. One pilot, after climbing out of his shot-up Mustang, looked at the ground crew and said something that became almost a motto. "The Mustang took me home when no other airplane would have." But here's the story in particular that captures everything the Mustang represented. A story of impossible odds, cutting-edge enemies, and a pilot who refused to quit flying a plane that refused to quit flying. March 24, 1945. The war in Europe is in its final months, but the Luftwaffe still has teeth. And on this day, they're about to show something new. Captain Roscoe Brown, one of the legendary Tuskegee Airmen, takes off in his P-51 as part of a massive escort mission protecting bombers headed for Berlin. The formation is huge, hundreds of bombers, dozens of fighters, except the Germans are throwing everything they have left into this fight, including their secret weapon, the Me-262, the first operational jet fighter in history. An aircraft so advanced it shouldn't even exist yet, capable of speeds approaching 540 miles per hour. In 1945, encountering an Me-262 was like a cavalry soldier suddenly facing a machine gun. You were simply outmatched by technology. Brown spots them first, 3 jets screaming into the bomber formation at speeds that make conventional fighters look like they're standing still. These jets can't dogfight well, but they don't need to. They make one high-speed pass, shred a bomber with their 30mm cannons, and accelerate away before anyone can react. Brown doesn't hesitate. He pushes his Mustang into a dive, trying to intercept the jets before they can make their killing run. That's when the German escorts arrive. Conventional fighters, FW-190s, were diving on Brown and his squadron from above. His Mustang shudders violently as cannon shells punch through the airframe. Warning lights flash red across his instrument panel. Control cables fray. The engine note changes, rougher, angrier, like the Merlin itself is wounded. Any other pilot in any other plane would break off. Get out of there. Save yourself. Brown stays in the fight. He's watching an Me-262 line up on a B-17, knowing that if that jet gets its run, 10 men are gonna die. He pulls his damaged Mustang into a turn that shouldn't be possible with severed control cables, getting his gun sight lined up through sheer will and skill. The jet pilot never sees him coming. Brown squeezes the trigger. Tracers arc across the sky. The Me-262's fuselage erupts in flames. He's just shot down one of the most advanced aircraft in the world while flying a plane that's actively dying around him. Now comes the hard part, getting home. His fuel gauge is dropping fast, a ruptured tank leaking precious fuel into the slipstream. Hydraulic fluid pools on the floor. The engine is rattling, temperature climbing into the red zone. Every instinct says this plane should quit, but the Mustang doesn't quit. Mile by agonizing mile, altitude bleeding away, Brown nurses that shot-up fighter westward. Other Mustangs form up around him, their pilots watching, ready to call out his position if he has to bail out. But Brown stays with it, and the Mustang stays with him. When he finally crosses into Allied territory and spots his airfield, the landing gear won't come down, and the hydraulics are gone. He has to crank them down manually while flying with one hand. The flaps barely respond. The engine is seconds from seizing. He brings it in anyway. Not graceful, more like a controlled crash. But he walks away. The ground crew can't believe what they're seeing. The Mustang looks like it's been through a shredder. Cannon holes everywhere. Structural damage that should have made the flight impossible. And yet somehow, it brought its pilot home. That day, Roscoe Brown became one of the few Allied pilots to shoot down a German jet fighter. But the real story is about the airplane that refused to die long enough to let him make history. There's a reason they named it the Mustang. Out in the American West, there are stories of wild horses that have captured imaginations for generations. Mustangs that survived predators, drought, injury, and situations that should have killed them. Some of those horses, even when badly wounded, would refuse to go down. They'd stand defiant against impossible odds, protecting their herd even when crippled. The P-51 Mustang carried that same spirit into the skies. It wasn't indestructible. Hundreds of Mustangs and their pilots never came home. But when one did return, limping, smoking, held together by damage control and pilot skill and something else that defied explanation, it became more than a machine. It became proof that sometimes resilience isn't about specifications or engineering tolerances. Sometimes it's about something deeper, something that won't quit even when quitting is the only rational option. By the time the war ended, P-51 Mustang pilots had destroyed nearly 5,000 enemy aircraft over Europe. Those are impressive numbers, but they don't capture the real achievement. The real achievement was all the bombers that made it home. All those crews, 20-year-old kids from Iowa and Texas and New York who saw their targets, dropped their bombs, and lived to tell about it because silver Mustangs were circling overhead, standing between them and the wolves. A veteran bomber pilot said it best. Before the P-51, we were the hunted. After the P-51, we were the hunters. The Mustang didn't just help win the air war, it changed the psychology of aerial combat. German pilots learned that attacking bombers was no longer easy prey. It was a deadly gamble. And American bomber crews learned that they weren't alone anymore. Today, you can still see P-51 Mustangs at air shows, their polished aluminum gleaming in the sun, that distinctive Merlin engine note making the ground tremble. They're museum pieces now, carefully restored relics from another era. But they're more than that. Every time one of those warbirds takes to the sky, it carries with it the memory of what it represented. Not just American engineering or military might, something more fundamental. Resilience, the refusal to quit, the willingness to protect others even when you're broken yourself. The P-51 Mustang earned its name. Like those wild horses of the American plains, it showed a spirit that transcended its physical form. Wounded, staggering, parts falling off, engine screaming its last, and still it flew. Still it fought. Still it brought its pilot home. The guardian of the bombers, the angel in silver, the wild horse of the skies, the plane that refused to die. If this story moved you, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs to hear about what real resilience looks like. And subscribe, because there are more stories like this, stories of machines and the people who flew them, stories that deserve to be remembered and retold. The Mustang's legacy isn't just in museums or history books. It lives on every time someone refuses to quit when everything says they should. Every time someone protects others at their own cost. Every time the impossible becomes possible through sheer, stubborn will. That's the spirit of the Mustang. And that spirit is eternal.